Welcome to the Sherborn Advisory Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. The time is 7:01 p.m. We will now conduct a roll call to verify a quorum. I will call each member by name. When you hear your name, please respond by saying either present in person or present remotely. I am present in person. Nora?
Present in person.
Paul? Present in person. George?
Present in person.
Alex?
Present in person.
Ken?
Present in person.
We have 6 members present in person and no members are present remotely. So the quorum confirmed, the meeting is called to order at 7:01 p.m. Since all members are physically present, all votes during the meeting will be conducted by voice. Tonight's agenda is as follows. Review and approve meeting minutes from January 14, 2026. The reserve fund transfer we will not be hearing tonight, will be deferred to another meeting. Operating budget presentations for the Protection Life and Property Group, police, fire, EMT, and emergency communications. Revolving fund presentations for ambulance, fire, and police sale of surplus equipment. Capital presentations, police and fire, and finishing with any advisory committee member reports. Are there any items to add to the agenda that were not reasonably anticipated at least 48 hours before this meeting and that require attention before our next scheduled meeting on February 4, 2026? Hearing none, I move to accept the agenda as read. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The agenda is adopted. I did distribute the meeting minutes from January 14. Does anybody have any corrections to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, the meeting minutes will be adopted. Thank you.
Stephen, do we need a vote on that?
Oh, yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we need a motion and a second?
Yes, we did it. Who would like to make a motion on the acceptance of the
So
minutes?
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We got the fuzz watch.
Abstaining? Thank
We got to
you.
be careful.
Thank you.
Buzz.
Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate that. All right. So we have protection of life and property, and we will start with Chief Galvin of the Sherborn Police Department.
Sit in the hot seat.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Chief, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Are there any updates that you'd like to discuss about the police department in general before getting into the specifics of your budget?
Nothing. I mean, some things that kind of relate to the budget, just in terms of personnel. I think one thing you're probably all aware of, kind of how our budgets worked and how things we're kind of always in flux with staffing. It's not unique to Sherborn, unfortunately. It's kind of the state of policing in our area and in the country. Right now, I actually had lunch with 5 other police chiefs yesterday, and the discussion was where are you finding people, who you get, and we all have openings. You know, we'll have 2 graduating the police academy tomorrow afternoon. That puts us at full staff, and I got about 2 weeks before someone leaves. So you take a step ahead, and then you take a step back. So it's just the challenges that relate to that. Overall, in terms of the police department, we're doing great. We've been working towards accreditation, which is I think a big step. I don't know if you heard it in the select board meetings when we talked about it. Paul Durensis mentioned that the town started that process in the year 2000. So we've reached the first step, which is certification, which was a kind of a milestone for us. And we're hoping that in the next year, we'll reach that second step of a full accreditation, which is really good. And if you're not familiar with that, that's a full review of all our policies and procedures to line up with statewide and national best practices to really reduce liability. Hopefully, reduce any potential costs or losses as a result. So things are really going well. I have a good team working on that, and things are moving along.
Which organization does the review?
So the Commonwealth has what used to be actually a state agency, but now it's become a private nonprofit so it's done by other police officers in Massachusetts. So there's an organization of the board that sets the standards, and they piggyback CALEA, which is a national organization. And what they do is that they set those standards, and then we use peer review to go through and make sure that the standards are met.
Congratulations on the first part.
Yeah.
Does that help with hiring then too? Do people look at that or?
It's not really something that a potential recruit would look at. It's something that sometimes actually rank and file look at, like, oh no, we're going to have to, fill out different forms, cross more T's, dot more I's. But it really doesn't create that much work. We had a department meeting a week ago, and we talked about it. And I was like, I know you guys groan when I talk about it, and because it really it protects the community. But in protecting the community, it puts them in the right space that it protects them from liability as well, and that's the important part to understand. So this year or next year's proposed budget is pretty straightforward. It's level services, as I'm sure you're all aware. The majority of our budget is driven by 3 employment contracts. So we have the employment contract with the police union. There's an independent contract with the police lieutenant, and then one with me. So that really drives the majority of our budget. When you look at the top half of our sheet, which is our salaries, really those are all controlled in their contractual obligations. So there's very little that we can do with what's in those line items. As you look at it for the year, we did make a few adjustments, trying to get to close some actuals. Hopefully, we're going to hit our actuals in overtime. One thing being a department in flux is that, when we lose people, every shift that we run, someone calls out sick, whatever it may be, or we're running short, the less people we have working for us, the more overtime we have to spend, the more backfill we have to do, because we have to have a body on the street to do the job. So when we're not at full strength, the beauty of being at full strength is then we spend less on overtime because, we can drop down a person on a shift and not necessarily have to fill things. But when we're closer to minimum type staffing, we have to backfill just about everything, and that becomes quite a cost. And if you go back to FY22, FY21, and you look at really some of the historical data, there was some really out of control overtime spending because our staffing numbers were so low. And we've fortunately been able to come out of that a lot because of our transition to regional dispatch.
Your contract was July 1 of 26, 25?
So I'm in year 2 right now. So this proposed budget reflects year 3 of my contract. Yeah.
Yes.
I believe Laura has joined online.
Thank you. We'll note that Laura joined at 7:05.
Okay. So when you look at the changes for FY27 over what was FY26, there's a few lines that are reduced, a couple of things that got incorporated into the lieutenant's contract that were stipends in the past. And then some of the just some things that we adjusted to reflect some of the actuals on some of the holiday pay and health insurance opt-out. So even though those could potentially still be liabilities that we would owe, they're things that the officers hasn't necessarily taken advantage of. And what I mean by that is we have a health insurance opt-out. So if you opt out of the health insurance, it's trying to, save a little bit of money, a little bit more money to the officer to not have a larger expense for the town on the health insurance cost. And we haven't had as many officers signed up in that as the last few years. So you can actually see how it's reflected in our actuals. And we adjusted that to reflect the actuals because what we see right now, we don't think we're going to have people transitioning that. It could happen and it could be a liability, but we made that to could kind of reflect where we're at. Also in the holiday pay. So we have some holiday incentive pay based on particular holidays, Christmas, New Year's, the big ones where there's this kind of bonus holiday pay if people work those holidays. Fortunately, those tend to be holidays where people take time off and we're not back, we try not to have it where we're backfilling. So we kind of have it that we're not paying the maximum we have to pay on those holiday benefits. So we've reduced it to kind of get to where we are for actuals. So that results in about just over a 4%, increase in our wages, which again, like I said, really drives our budget. When we look at our expenses, same, we're level service on our expenses, and you can see there's only two lines with changes, and both of those reflect grants that are coming to an end. So we utilize a grant, or we've utilized since FY23 a grant, or calendar year 23. It was a calendar year 23 grant from the federal government for accreditation. So we have a consultant that works with us. So that is coming to an end. We're actually in the process of closing that grant out now. So that's $5,000 that's returning to the budget. And then the other is under our admin info systems. That's about a $3,800 increase. We had a grant through our insurer, through Maya, and it's for an AI-based application that officers utilize. It's on smartphones. It's on all of our department computers, and it allows us. It's called Blue Voice. It allows us to search, quickly, Mass General laws, current case law, all of our policies and procedures, town bylaws, as well as other things that we don't necessarily need to search on scene when we're trying to come up with what we're going to do, how we're going to handle a situation. So that was a grant that was supplied through our insurer. Our insurer thinks it's a good idea to try and reduce liability. And so that's something that it's a $3,800 increase coming back into the budget, but it works out to $18 a month per officer. So when you kind of break it down, it's not a huge expense. And if it saves us from one lawsuit, it's beyond worth what its value. It really works out well. Fortunately, it was developed after an incident in Cambridge, and it was a group made up of people from MIT and Harvard that came up with it together to try and benefit law enforcement. It's worked out really well. So they started in Massachusetts, they partnered with Maya, and now they're moving nationwide. So pretty, and we were lucky because we got into it in the beginning through Maya. Our costs are actually much less than new customers coming on. And that's really the crux of our budget. Nothing crazy, and we're just trying to continue to deliver the level of service we're able to provide.
And the union contract, this will be year 2. That's union contract.
Yep.
And lieutenant will be year 2 as well.
Year 2 as well.
Question on stipends, if I may.
Yep.
So I some in your budget, I think the total of your stipends is like 87,500. It looked like you were able to zero out some of them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, it's like whether there's an opportunity to find grants for other stipends, and if there's other room in the budget, reduce those stipends.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a lot of the stipend things we do is flat rates to not become an hourly wage and increase on a percentage every year. And in some ways, those benefit the communities by doing it that way versus having it at an increasing level, which is why we go for a stipend. The stipends that we zeroed out were rolled in. They were jobs that the lieutenant was doing, but it's been kind of carryover stipends from when they were in the patrol contract. So we incorporated into his general job. So it's tough to find any grants for salary and any of those things. It really makes it difficult. I mean, the big one you really look at it too, is educational incentive too. That used to be covered partially by the state, half of that, but that program unfortunately ended.
Is it pretty easy to pick the stipend expense?
I mean, stipends are flat rate, so we know where we're going to be stipend wise every year, unless it's a particular stipend. I'll give you an example. There was a stipend in my contract that gets triggered based upon accreditation. So if we don't hit accreditation next year, well, there's a little bit of savings there, so there's motivation for me to get it done. But again, that the stipend was there last year, and we didn't get it done, the first portion of it done until this year. So we saved a little bit there.
Okay.
Question.
Please.
Can you explain the animal control? So you have the animal control stipend that you took out 2,000.
Yeah.
But then you have under the next section, animal control, that's 2,500. Can you just explain that?
Yep. So the animal control stipend was the personnel cost related to animal control. But then there's the expense cost related to animal control. So we pick up a stray, they have to be housed at a kennel. We don't have our own kenneling facilities. We're paying by the day if an animal's being housed. If animals have to be euthanized, the expense ends up coming to the community if we're especially a lot of it goes along with stray dogs that there's not an owner. But also other expenses related to that. And we also tied in some of the expenses when we did it, when Officer West came on board for his food and his insurance and those type of things. So it was an animal related cost and it covered under the animal control line.
Okay, so basically that's zeroed that out now under,
The stipend we zeroed out because that was a job. It's a job that's been performed by the lieutenant. So he's going to continue to perform it, but he's compensated under his contract. So the stipend went away.
okay,
But the expenses for the food we have to buy, any other products we have to buy to take care of an animal that may come into our custody or treat an animal that's in our custody stays in that expense line.
so is it appropriate for me to ask, like, so did it go up by 2,000 on that, or no, it pretty much is a savings by putting it under some,
It was kind of it's kind of hard to say it's apples to apples because it was rolled in as part of a total compensation.
okay. Thank you.
Chief, on the information systems,
Yes.
that line item.
Yep.
Is that managed by Klaus?
The majority of it, no. Most of it is things that we have to pay for. We have to pay for maintenance for our records management system, maintenance for our digital fingerprint system. So not necessarily managed by Klaus. I mean, Klaus works on some of the products, but these are kind of the service contracts that relate to those products.
I mean, this is an example where like an IT expense is related just to the police departments. If you kept it in the
Yeah,
department
I think
budget.
with the exception of one, there's a records management kind of expense that covers both police and fire. We've rolled all of that into the police budget instead of having, it's separated between police and fire.
Whereas some of the, the IT consolidated budget are generally expenses that hit every department or they benefit from.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of products or services that we have to utilize technology-wise that, are pretty specific that we have to pay for.
Chief Ward has some as well, or in his budget.
Our hope is that the dispatch center regional dispatch is looking at some new products that may take some of the expenses away from us in the future in terms of some of the product maintenance. Things like that.
Anybody else have questions on this operating budget? Thank you on that one. So why don't we jump over to your capital?
Yeah.
requests?
Capital again is kind of straightforward. We've been in a replacement cycle with our vehicles that we keep frontline vehicles 5 years. Roughly, we're putting 20,000 miles a year on our vehicles. And so this is the replacement of one of our frontline Chevy Tahoes. You'll remember last year we came forward and we replaced a vehicle with a full electric patrol vehicle. That is something that will probably continue in the future. There's some things that we need to talk about in terms of charging infrastructure and some other things. But I still want to see how it works out for a full year. It's only been in place for about 6 months. And we just really need to see how that continues to work as a frontline vehicle. So we're going to replace a Tahoe with a Tahoe. And the benefit of doing that is over the last 5 years, there's only been subtle changes in the body style and the internals of the Tahoe, which allow us to reuse some of the equipment. So you'll see on the initial request, it was 80,000. So that was full upfit with new equipment and a new vehicle. I've been working with our upfitter, and that ask has been reduced to 75,000 because of the equipment we're going to be able to reuse from the old vehicle to the new vehicle. We take a little bit of a chance because the light heads have a 5-year warranty and things like that. But a lot of the light heads we're going to reuse are internal. They haven't been exposed to the elements, and we should have no problem utilizing those in the new vehicle and saving us some money.
One of the things I recollect last year you were trying to do was get the commonality of certain equipment into the vehicles, the arms and so forth.
Yep.
How did that come?
So we're in pretty good shape. We've been able to replace all of our rifles using some of the surplus funding. So we have one platform across all the vehicles, which is very, very nice. With the changes and the requirements from the post commission, we were going to have officers train on 3 separate rifle platforms every, couple times a year, it was going to become costly for overtime. Now it's one platform. So no matter what vehicle you go to, what rifle you grab, everyone is grabbing something that's set up exactly the same. So it worked out really well.
You have many to replace still, or are they all?
No, we were able to do all the rifles.
Last year as well, you proposed EV vehicle. Curious if you could describe how that worked out.
So it's working out well, as I was kind of saying. I think I can see in the future us adding. So we have two EVs in our fleet right now, and a hybrid. The first EV we added was a Mustang Mach-E, which is used administratively. I think we're going to enter our first real expense for that vehicle. It's been in play for just over 2 years, $275 in maintenance so far. And really the only reason it's at that level is because we've had the maintenance done at the dealership. And they've basically charged us to rotate the tires. It really hasn't needed a lot, but it's going in on Monday. Based on what they told me 10,000 miles ago, it may be in need of brakes. I'm not sure I believe that, reading some of the things that these cars are going 75, 100,000 miles before brake replacements, and knowing that the way I drive it, I use regenerative braking quite a bit in one pedal mode. So we'll see what that goes, but that could be the first real expense on that. The patrol vehicle we've put in play has worked out really well. One of the things I did on purpose to see how it worked, I guess the best way to say it is I put our most seasoned officer behind the wheel to start. My thinking with that is, one, if he can do it, anyone will be willing to do it. Because it's modern technology, it's a little bit different. And one of the great things was he was in it for a week, and didn't necessarily use the language he used, but he came into the station and he was like, I need to get one pedal mode in my pickup truck. He goes, it is unbelievable. I love to drive that way. And so it's been great to see that change. There's been some learning things with this winter. The first storm we didn't have, he hadn't had to drive it in the snow and figure out, because as we've talked about, they're much heavier. There's a lot to go, and you have that mass moving. That mass doesn't like to stop very easy. So one pedal mode doesn't work as well in the winter. So we're learning some things and figuring some things out. And I would expect that I would come back in future years looking at adding to more of the fleet. But I think we would have to have a greater discussion as it comes to charging infrastructure. It's great we have a fast charger out front, but we would probably need something at a level 2 level or something else that does some slower rate charging over near the police station. So during their downtime when they're not being used, we can plug them in. One, we don't want to just park our car out here and block up a charger. So the way it's working now, and actually, after the two graduate tomorrow, there'll be another office. There'll be 2 officers assigned to it, sharing it. And so we'll see how that charging works. But he's charging it, periodically throughout the shifts or throughout the week. But if he starts with a full charge, before we hit the real cold weather, he could do 2+ shifts without having to worry about charging it again. Yep.
I knew you were going to be asking for a charger these days.
Not super expensive, I promise. Not one of those. I'm talking with an electrician like $800 or $900. Not big.
Yeah, the charge point ones.
Yeah, simple like home type charge point. Not to the extent that are out here, but something that that we had a car there, we can park it and let it charge overnight slowly, and just to maintain that.
And good to know about the tires too. Remember, I was asking about the tires.
40,000 miles on the tires that I'm driving, and no issues of yet. It really, as long as we're rotating them regularly, it seems to be working out pretty well.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So for this one, you're decommissioning a vehicle?
Yeah.
And then you pick over what you can take off of it.
Yes.
What becomes of that old vehicle?
So we'll auction that vehicle off.
What do you get for a vehicle like that?
It depends. It really varies. The last one we auctioned off, I think we got like $1,500. This is a newer body style Chevy Tahoe. I don't want to say too much because if someone bidding on it might be here, but it's got some electrical gremlins, and I'm going to be happy that it's gone. But it could bring some money. It's amazing. I'll go back during COVID. We auctioned off it was in 2022. We auctioned a 2013 Explorer with 130,000 miles on it. We got $13,000. It was crazy, but again, it was time. But I would expect that we would get a decent amount of money for this. I would say I would be expecting in excess of $7,000 or $8,000, if not more. It could definitely drive itself up. I haven't looked to see what the Tahoes are getting.
Those funds go into the surplus revolving account.
Okay.
Shared by police, fire, public works.
I would say I will always support a new charger for the police department as long as it's a Dodge.
Well, it's coming back. And actually, from what we had a meeting with all three manufacturer reps recently, and the Dodge Charger was coming back, but only as an EV. From what they've told us now it's not. It's coming in the police package. It's coming back as a internal combustion as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that vehicle works.
Anybody else? Questions from the Jim? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So you want to stay for the dispatch money or?
Oh, do you want to do that next? That might work.
Yeah.
Just as easy to do.
Yeah, there's really not much to talk about with that. The dispatch number is directly related to a contract between the select board and the Holbrook Regional Emergency Communications Center. It reflects we're at the 75%, so we're covered 75% of the fee. With a 25% coverage from the state. And it's where we stand. I don't want to speak for Chief Ward, but compared to where we were and what we're able to get from HREC, I've been very happy. With anything there's bumps in the road, but they're very willing to work through everything with us. We lost our deputy director, unfortunately, a few months ago. That was a big hit. She was an important cog in the wheel, but they haven't missed a beat. They replaced her position, which was great. They actually selected someone that used to work for State 911. Having that connection to State 911 is always it's a nice relationship to have because that's where the funds come from. And things are continuing to move forward. Dispatch keeps adding communities, which really I think is going to be a benefit to us as we enter into the final year of our contract with them. And it's time to renegotiate a new deal. I think economy of scale is going to hopefully start to bring those numbers down. One thing that the dispatch center is looking to do is to actually open up a second facility. We're kind of maxed out where we were or where we are, and they're actually trying to move it to this area because
sites.
yeah, they have. We've joined. Sudbury joined. Holliston, as of right now, Maynard, Marlboro, all are looking to join HREC. And Dover has signed an agreement, which is huge. Having Dover as kind of a partner is going to be is very important. But those communities, especially the city of Marlboro, looking to join on, that opens up some space. Marlboro had actually tried to join in a different center, the Neshoba Regional Dispatch, and they were voted down. And they actually had a building site which Neshoba would have moved their dispatch center to. So Marlboro has a potential option should that they sign on to open up. And that would be nice just to, one, for redundancy for our communications, that we would have two centers should something happen, and two centers geographically spaced out, one kind of headed towards the South Shore and one up in the Metro West. We know our weather at times tends to be a little bit different in those areas. So as events happen and things happen, it would provide us some redundancy, and they continue to work on that as well. We had our radio company out just yesterday working on some new fiber lines coming from Comcast to provide redundancy. So it's constantly improving. I think we talked about the generators before. I don't know if you've heard of the generator project that's in the works, and the funding is there. So in the near future, we'll have a new generator. The fire department will have a new generator, and
All funded through the region.
all funded through the region. So,
And then there's been significant prior capital as well.
oh yeah. It's, I think I think Chief Ward with his ambulance and radios that they've supplied are going to be supplying has been a huge improvement.
It's just for clarification. So dispatch means when you dial 911.
Yep.
That's where it goes to
Yep.
dispatch. just out of curiosity, like what kind of building site are we looking at? Like where is it located now?
So they're in Holbrook.
Holbrook?
Yeah. So their building there is attached to their public safety building. They're looking for anything. Ideally, they're looking for a site with elevation for radio communications, something that potentially could have line of sight to the Blue Hills would be great because they have a major tower at the Blue Hills, and that would allow for a microwave connection, a wireless connection to there. But anything's an option.
How many people do they have employed there?
68.
Thank you.
Yeah.
68.
Yeah. And my guess is when you look at that, they would be looking at potentially doubling that as they move to a new facility and filling a new facility with as many communities as they have at the Holbrook facility.
So 68 folks in another facility.
Another facility, yeah.
How many square feet do they are looking for?
I don't know. I mean, they have a good size footprint.
Square foot was they are 14 dispatch stations.
Yeah.
14 dispatch.
And they would be looking at least that. I don't think they expected, because not long before we moved into the center there that we were accepted. They had just built a new building. I don't think they expected it to grow this fast.
Is the fiscal 27 amount, is that a fixed amount or is that an estimate?
That's a fix.
Fixed amount by contract. Or it's actually a municipal agreement between the town of Sherborn and the town of Holbrook. That sets up this contract. So that's a fixed amount, which represents, as the chief said, 25% less than the full amount. 25% is still being funded through state 911 funds. After fiscal year 27, the town would be responsible for the full amount, so over $300,000 per year at the current contract. However, that is, 5-year contract. Nearing the end of it, the select board would be getting to discuss renegotiating that contract or extending it out.
And there's a lot of discussion about the cost of emergency communications, and state 911 realizes the burden that it puts on communities, and they're trying to work with the centers to lower that cost. They're fortunate that we all pay for it. You look on your cell phone bills, we're all paying that surcharge that goes into those to cover those costs. And the state has tried and is working to open up some centers of their own, much less robust, maybe simple just 911 centers. But in doing so, they've realized that the state is offering a product at zero cost, but they don't answer business lines. There's a lot of other things that they don't do. So that they're trying to work with the existing centers that are there, especially the ones that are very successful, to offer a greater incentive for communities to sign on and for communities to stay, because they realize once we hit the 5-year mark, we're never going to get a 911 system back in our building, but we could move to another center. And I don't think they want to see people negotiating centers against centers if they can provide more incentive to the centers to keep the cost down.
How do they determine price? Is it a per capita type thing or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, there's different models. This was, based on their operating budget at the time,
The number of members they
the
have.
number of members they had.
So I see there's an opportunity for something.
Yeah. And at the time, it was a lot of small to medium sized communities. No extremely large communities. So it was a lot of light communities. They've taken on Norwood, much larger. So, when communities like that come on board, they're taking more resources. They should probably be paying a little bit bigger piece of the pie.
Well,
So that changes things a little bit as we move forward.
they may change the model.
And this saves on personnel.
Yeah. So it's
Like
it's
staffing.
not only the costs that came out of our budgets, but also on the back end for benefits and all those other things.
Well,
And I'll tell you, for us, it was that was one of our biggest staffing issues before, was officers did not want to work the desk. We
Couldn't find dispatch.
couldn't find dispatchers. So kind of the pay rates we were advertising weren't competitive. There was some much larger municipalities that offered a much more robust package, and it's just what it was. It's a product of what it was. But dispatchers in general tend to be short-term employees. It's difficult. A lot of them that go on to become police officers and firefighters, it's often used as a stepping stone. So it became very difficult to keep anybody. And so on the flip side, we were pulling a police officer off the street every shift to cover the desk. You send a police officer to the police academy, they learn to do all these things, to be out there, be out in the public, do their job. And we tell them to sit and answer the phone.
A different skill set too.
Yep, very, very much so.
Thank you.
Do you remember what fiscal year that first came in?
Started in January of 23.
January 23, yeah.
Flip over.
I have a question, if I may.
Please.
Just wondering if you chiefs have actually ever tallied up how much the town has gotten from Holbrook for things like the radios and so on.
I don't have that spreadsheet, but
Recent one, but
Yeah.
the Chiefs have it, and it's significant.
it was, yeah,
Sounds that way.
Ballpark for the fire department is 600,000.
yeah.
Oh,
Ballpark.
Yeah.
We've gotten several rounds of radios, computers, security system. MDTs, mobile data terminals, which is a fancy term for a different type of computer for all trucks.
Yeah.
And some other equipment.
Yeah, same.
The generators that are
The
coming,
generators,
some other infrastructure they put in the street for connectivity.
yeah, I think when you look at you look at the individualized items that went to the fire department, the individualized items went to the police department, but then our entire radio system as a whole, a complete overhaul of the entire radio system for the town, a fiber loop that now connects the police station, the fire station, the school, the DPW building, our two remote radio towers. So really some other benefits to the town as well, things that we could piggyback in the future for camera system, all sorts of things, having that fiber connection.
The original grant, when we switched over, was achieved 2.5 million,
I think so.
including the dispatch costs, personnel costs and everything for the 5 years. That was covered by the grant. And then every year we're able to apply for more
Yeah.
capital items, which we've gotten radios, pagers.
Yeah,
Every
the
year.
one nice thing is when our mobile data terminals, our portable radios, hit end of life, we just inform them for the next grant year. They'll put it into the grant, and it comes around. I think the generators are a perfect example. So the way the generator project came around, we didn't ask for it. We had a power outage one day and one evening, and behind the police station. So the police station went on generator power. Or I should say the police station was supposed to go on generator power. And what happened is the director of the dispatch center, he's very tech savvy, very into radios. He noticed that the radio system, the equipment that was in our building, stayed on backup power, didn't go back on to regular power. So he reached out to Sean Colleen right away, found out that we hadn't gone on a generator, and he said immediately to Sean, he goes, "Get me a quote. I want to replace that generator." Sean said, "That'd be great. You replace that generator, but I'm going to have a fire chief that's mad at me if I replace the generator at the police station, not the fire station, because the generator at the fire station's older." And he said, "Okay, get me a quote for both." So worked out really well.
Excellent. Any other questions on dispatch? Good. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Just want to add a couple of things to dispatch. Something that's not talked about in terms of dispatch is the safety of the personnel, our personnel. Because the dispatchers, in a way, they're a lifeline, So we had a number of really significant incidents, fires and other things with our dispatch system that we have now. And it's safer for our people, police and fire, because they can listen to what's actually happening. Where before, there was one police officer in a room calling for mutual aid, and we call a lot of mutual aid if we have a building fire, answering 911 calls. We had a house fire in the old system when dispatch was here, and 3 people from the same house called 911 at the same time. So the dispatcher had trouble getting us going because they were answering 911. Well, you don't have those delays now, and minutes count in this business for police and fire. And that's something that gets lost, the safety of the police officer on the road, or the firefighter in a burning building, or working, certainly been a huge benefit for that benefit too. So.
All right, thank you. Let's just jump right into your budget.
Yep. All right. I'm ready when you are. So fire, in the salaries category, obviously there's a big increase in all wages. I think four of you, including Flores the fifth, were here with me a year ago when for this same meeting, and we talked about this account and how last year was going to work out. And I remember saying that we probably should have asked for more, but and at that time when we made the budget last year, we came up with our best estimate. We had a very busy 2 or 3 months in between then and the advisory meeting, and it's kind of continued. That budget line, it covers fire calls, training, and some other expenses, i.e. we just had a snowstorm this past weekend, 18 inches of snow or so. And when we have events like that, we have to put people in the building. We have an on-call fire department. I promise you, you don't want call firefighters coming from their homes in a snowstorm to go get a fire truck to come to you, So we're proactive in the sense that we staff up, as do other fire departments. This line covers all that. The number one driver by far for this increase is calls. Our fire call volume in general, but particularly fire calls, have risen over the last several years. And it's not just the amount of calls, it's the types of calls, because not all calls are created equally. Some, unfortunately, cost more. I'll give you an example. We had a 2-alarm fire about 4 weeks ago. An event like that is a $3,500, $4,000 event for our wages. And we've had not just other building fires in this fiscal year, but other instances. For instance, we had a hazmat over the summer, propane leak. That was an 8-hour incident for us with about 15 to 16 people. And again, about $4,000 incident, give or take, just ballpark. And we've had a lot of those, and they add up, unfortunately, So we're not only seeing an increase in volume, but an increasing complexity. Just to give you a little statistic, we have a term that we call, it's a full recall, or in our lingo, in our archaic lingo, it's in the industry, it's called a struck box. So what that means is we have this incident in which our people are already on scene and they need more help, or based on what the dispatcher gets for information, they put that signal out saying we need all available members to go. Building fire, accident with entrapment, serious hazardous materials thing, gas leaks in buildings is one of them for us. We had 84 of those types of incidents in 2025. We had 38 in 2024. No policy change. It's just the way the year rolled out. I think by our advisory meeting last year, which was, I think, February 4th, we had 19 in January. We had a very, very busy January last year, but luckily this year is not turning out to be as busy. It's January so far, but so those things are impacting this budget.
What do you think the cause of what's the systemic issue?
So
There is one.
I've looked at this a few ways. There's no one category in particular that's driving this. What I think, and just this is based on my experience from responding to calls, because I go to calls regularly based on our staffing model, is we're making more house calls during the day, the daytime hours, than we have before. And I think that's because, honestly, there's more people in homes in Sherborn during the day. I think there's more people working from home. And, instead of them setting off their fire alarm at work at 10 a.m., they do it at home when they have their breakfast or when they have their medical or whatnot. That's having it. As far as the significant incidents, there's really no one driver. Things just happen. We had a few hazmats over the summer, which are sort of rare incidents, 2 involving propane, 1 involving a suspicious package, things that don't usually happen a lot. We're still averaging a few working fires a year in general in Sherborn, with building fires, and at least 1 multiple alarm fire, which is 2 alarms or greater every year. And that's been the case since I've been here. And for a town the size of Sherborn, that's a lot of incidents. So that's happened.
I have a question, Chief.
Yeah.
What happens if you go over budget? Because if you can still get your men at the place.
Say that again?
I'm just curious, what happens if you go over budget? Do you get funds elsewhere? Is there a backstop fee?
We do, like last year on this, because of this line, if you recall in July, we had to do a year-end transfer. Because we did go over in this category.
So the backstop is other departments that are underspent or the
Yeah.
reserve fund. Right, there's
No,
no
I
other.
wonder, like, if it's hard to kind of predict, right, is there a penalty for, going under what you think? Like, you definitely forecast what it's gonna be.
Yeah, and we did forecast what we think it's going to be. You know, one of the challenging things, like I mentioned, is the bigger events. You know, like the snowstorm we just had. You know, the more unexpected things that happen that pile up, the more it affects this line. And unfortunately, you know, and I hate to say this, there's not a lot we can do about it. You know, I've spent a lot of time and energy looking at this account and the numbers and so forth. And you know, there's not a heck of a lot we can do. The fire department's always budgeted somewhat conservatively. You know, we were, you know, years ago, the effort was don't overtax and don't over budget. You know, this is, I think it's, you know, a realistic number, you know, based on that. You know, the other thing I failed to mention is approximately $2,500 to $3,000 of the increase is due to training. So we have training at the fire department virtually every week. People have there's minimum standards of attendance. And our averages are above that minimum. You know what I mean? So they're able to come to, for instance, whatever fire trainings they can. And luckily for our department, you know, our averages of attendance are up, which is a good thing all around. So,
I asked this out of ignorance.
go ahead.
Do towns of our size have a fee structure for charging back?
For fire calls,
Yeah.
they don't. The only thing that we have are alarm charges. It's a select board policy, excuse me. And I've never used it because you have to have so many alarm activations within a certain period of time, and that typically doesn't happen. We came close with one of the churches once because it was coming in a lot, and there was some negligence on the part of a contractor. But that's really it as far as fire calls. The one thing that we do occasionally bill for are certain hazmats when we can legally bill. I'll give you an example. We had a fire in an EV 3 years ago, I want to say, and our expense for that incident was $9,500 in personnel costs and equipment. And it took us about a year to get the funds, but we did get the funds from Geico, the reimbursement, if you will, that incident. It took quite some time to do that. Hazardous materials incidents are the only ones that we can do that route. It's not charging a fee. There's a different term for it under the federal regulation in which we can bill for it that escapes me. But, you know, some of the hazmats that we had this year, they wouldn't meet the threshold to qualify for that.
I was thinking along the lines of gas leaks.
Yeah. I don't know of any fire departments that do. I know one fire department tried to bill Eversource for wires down responses, and Eversource wouldn't pay the bill. No. With all the money that they charge us, I think they should, you know, the users, you know, so.
So what I heard from the systemic question was people are working from home, so there's more stuff going on at home as it what
During the day.
could have taken place at the office.
We've always, a lot of our calls that are out in public, accidents, not all of them, but a large number of them, things that happen in our open spaces, construction incidents, they've all, you know, a lot of those have always happened during the weekday. Now we're making more regular house calls than we usually have in the past.
So how do you differentiate between an ambulance call and a fire call? Because the ambulance call, if you're sending out somebody, probably is billable to their insurance, perhaps.
Yes.
As opposed to a fire call.
It's all, so we, you know, I was going to talk about that more when we talked about the ambulance budget, but for us to bill for an ambulance call, we have to transport somebody to the hospital. You know, that's the thing. 3 things have to happen. You have to have I always say this, you have to have an ambulance call. You have to take them to the hospital. And then what we need depends on the type of insurance that the person has, whether it's private or public. No.
Thank you.
Yeah. So. Yes.
Alex?
Are there repeat offenders in town that are having you guys come out, either to their residents continually, or is it pretty random?
We don't have a lot of the industry term is frequent flyer.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of them. Seriously, and it's surprising. A lot of towns have a lot of patients that they go to their home every month, or sometimes every week, or sometimes every day. We don't have a lot of that. Occasionally somebody will be going through some type of illness. It's usually the senior population. And I go to a number of calls, and I always ask people, did you ever call us before? And some of those people are, no, I've lived here 50 years. I've never called for the ambulance, but then they need it for whatever reason, 4 times in 6 months, for something that they're going through, but it's not a common issue. We don't have a heck of a lot of repeat alarm offenders. We have a gas leak, an active gas leak right now. It's being
Don't look at me.
What's that? No, not yours. No. Out in the street at Smeen and Coolidge, we've gone there probably 10 times. They're repairing it. It was getting boring going back and forth there, but I just got a message today that, one of our officers was actually Klaus Ullman. He went there a few days ago, and it was the first time on his shift that he caught that call. He asked Eversource to check a different house than we've asked them to check. Eversource went in there later and found a potentially deadly carbon monoxide leak in their basement. So, we got to look into that a little bit more. But Klaus, I'm glad he did that for a lot of reasons. I think from what I've heard is their detector was in a location that wouldn't immediately pick it up. So, again, it's a nuisance call going 12 times, but that's a good example of a positive outcome. And I just heard about that about 4 hours ago.
So that you got some grants last year. So you talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, grants. So, we've been over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been really fortunate with grants. Something that a little bit of a problem that we're running into, though, is a lot of the stuff that we're allowed to replace via these grants, we've already replaced. So depending on the program, there's certain allowable items, if you will, for which you can that you can purchase, and on some of those lists, sort of running out, mostly because of the grants that we've already gotten. Some of which we've pursued through the town, but we're still applying. We have a grant application out right now for brush gear. We have another grant program coming to fruition that I'll actually talk about when we get down to some of the expenses. There's a federal grant that we apply for every year through FEMA. We've been very successful with, and we look for more. For instance, like we 2 years ago, we got a pretty random grant. Firehouse Subs has a grant program and for fire departments, and we applied and we got some equipment. So we certainly try. And I'm lucky where I have other people looking for them now too, not just me. So, and writing.
One of your big capital items last year was the turnout gear.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the status of that.
Yeah. So really interesting thing. So we went through that to buy backup sets of gear for our firefighters. So the industry standard has kind of gone to every firefighter gets 2 sets of gear. And because we have a call fire department, we have a lot of firefighters. We didn't want to go ahead and outfit all. We have 56 people, 43 of them are fire personnel, and the rest are EMTs. So we didn't want to purchase 43 additional sets of gear. So we settled on a number of 12, in which when the people go to an incident, they can go into that backup set of gear. For instance, I'm in a backup set of gear now. We just fought a fire in Medfield yesterday, and your gear becomes contaminated with carcinogens. You don't want to use it again. My gear froze. It was pretty cold out. So we have backup sets of gears to keep the firefighters in service. That was the gist of that request. Shortly after we made that request from the town, OSHA came out with some proposed changes to what's called the fire brigade standard. Hasn't been updated since the mid 1980s. One of the proposed changes was fire departments were going to have to buy and replace all fire gear with PFAS. So our gear that we have now has PFAS in it. I know we've heard a lot about PFAS in terms of drinking water. The PFAS in our gear, when it's exposed to extreme heat, actually off gases into the air and we breathe it in. So we waited a little bit because the industry was making some changes with PFAS-free gear. A number of fire chiefs did the same thing. Some of them had $250,000 or more that they were sitting on because they were waiting. The industry started selling PFAS-free gear. The city of Quincy bought a batch of it. They tested it. It had PFAS in it. There was a manufacturing error. It's since been corrected, and we have PFAS-free sets of gear on order to the tune of $33,000. I think there's $34,000 in that account. 34 and change. So the gear's on order now, and we'll begin likely March or April timeframe.
So we didn't get the PFAS gear then.
The new stuff we've ordered does not
Okay,
have PFAS in it.
Right.
We still have PFAS gear on the racks, but it's something that will, through grants,
phase out.
through our regular replacement, we'll work to replace.
Did they give you a time limit on that, the government?
Say that again?
Did OSHA give you a time
They
limit?
haven't, so what happened is there was so much pushback from the fire service that they held off, and it's still in review process. But one of my good friends, he just retired as chief, he went to the Capitol in Washington and testified, and there were a number of pushbacks on the whole, not just the gear, but the whole all the proposed changes. So they're still reviewing it, but we didn't want to go out and spend that money. And again, other chiefs did the same thing with the potential requirement looming where you might have to replace it if they pass what was proposed. So complicated answer to a simple question.
PFAS gear still good protection for the department.
It is. Unfortunately, it is more expensive. So right now for a fire coat and fire pants, paying $4,400. When I started as the fire chief in November of 2019, it was $2,700. So it's gone up a lot. Again, we've gotten gear through grants. We try to be really resourceful with it. But it's a tough one.
Is there a price range on that gear, or is that kind of like what it costs?
For the PFAS free stuff, it's pretty much what it costs. So we formed a committee to choose a manufacturer that we buy from.
Mhm.
Our gear is slightly more expensive for a very particular reason. The manufacturer that we buy from will alter the gear sizes. So when you get fitted for fire gear, it's like getting fitted for a tuxedo because the gear needs to move on you and bend and breathe when you're under like fire conditions so you don't get burned, and luckily for some of our new hires, we've been able to get that gear altered instead of buying a new set, which is, about 15% of the cost of a new set. So that's one of the many reasons why we went with that manufacturer.
Any status update on the ambulance?
Still a couple years out. So I just confirmed the paint color last week, and that's really, it is red. It is red. There's about 1,000 different shades of red though, so everything's complicated. But no, so that's still a couple years out. I think next year, I think it's still early, like to have a discussion. I know it's been brought up on whether we keep the current ambulance as a backup. I'm leaning towards yes, depending on the condition. If we keep it as a backup, the workload would be between 5 and 7% of what it is now. Our ambulance has to go for body work 3 weeks from now or so, and we have to borrow an ambulance from Alston. Luckily, they should have one. Borrowing an ambulance has been a real challenge in the past. I've been at a medical with Medway ambulance, and they called, obviously we finished the medical. They called me and said we need it back because our other one just went down. I think for the resiliency and the strategic planning of the town, we should have 2 ambulances. I think it's the only vehicle that we have in the town besides the street sweeper at the DPW, basically, that doesn't have a backup that can really perform that function.
Do you have enough storage there for it?
We don't. We'd have to move things around and become a little creative, but Again, still a little premature, just for planning for us, but
I don't know what you'd move around.
what's that?
I don't know how you'd find the space.
Allegedly, so our people seem to think if we move the boat and some of the storage at Station 2, we could get it in there, but it's still pretty early.
That's pretty
It
filled.
won't fit at Station 1. No,
Yeah.
there's no way.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of Station 1.
Yeah, absolutely, and unless we store it under the overhang, which is actually illegal, you can't store ambulances outside.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay.
that's a discussion, I think, a better discussion for next year, but just something I want to put on your radar.
Any more questions on fire before we go with ambulance? Thank you. Let's jump over to the ambulance stuff. And then we'll go to capital level.
I think can we go to the 231 ambulance revolving sheet? I think that's the best sheet to discuss this budget more. So if you're ready, I'm ready, Stephen.
Okay, please.
All right. So obviously the largest increase is wages, the EMT compensation. So it was a 7% increase there. So that totals about $30,000. 14,000 of that increase is COLA. And then the rest, there's basically three other reasons. So if you may recall, last year we talked about raises for the EMTs. They were sort of underpaid and still are. We proposed some big increases last year. We were asked to kind of spread them out a little bit. I don't know if you recall that discussion. So we spread them out. So the EMTs got a 75-cent raise over the COLA last July 1st, which was completely in the budget. They just got another 75 cents on January 1st. And again, that was an effort to spread the cost out. Because that raise happened on January 1st, the entire 12-month period for the year isn't in the budget. Because again, it started on January 1st. So the second half of that raise for a full budget year is in this request. It's about $6,500. We have another $6,500 in that request because we're looking to give them another 75 cents next January 1st to keep their pay competitive. Right now, our EMTs are making $23.10 per hour as of January 1st, where other fire departments that use part-time EMTs, we didn't look at full-time departments, when we did this. Other fire departments that use part-time EMTs are in private ambulance companies. They're in the $27 to $28 range, closer to $28. A lot of it's based on a pay for those services are based on years of experience as an EMT. That's the industry standard. We don't have that. If you looked at our people, their average experience combined, they'd be 28 plus. So we're looking to, with this budget request as of January 1st next year, bring their pay to $24.60. I think a really important consideration with our EMTs is the vast majority of them are firefighters. So when they're on duty for us, they're dual function, they're firefighter EMTs. We do give a little bit of a differential for firefighter EMTs that work on weekday shifts when we're short firefighters. We don't do it around the clock. But I think that's a pretty important consideration because they are performing both jobs where the other services, it's just single function, just as EMTs. Again, we're paying $23.10 right now. There's a town near us in the region that pays $20 an hour for the EMTs to be on call. $20 an hour. And then they get paid for calls on top of that. So we're paying just $3 more an hour now. And our people are in the building for immediate response to services,
So I just want to be sure I understand.
Yeah.
So in fiscal 26, that extra 75 cents an hour only appears for 6 months.
Yes, because it occurred on January 1st.
Right. And in fiscal 27, it's the full 12 months.
It's the full 12 months. Exactly.
Plus an additional in the second half of
Yes,
FY 27.
exactly.
And do you have issues finding people?
We don't have issues finding people right now. There's a caveat to that though. We haven't posted for EMTs in quite some time because we've had a lot of interest over the last year in the fire department, both for firefighters and EMTs. State law has since changed since we posted where we have to post what we pay people. Right, I believe it was October, right? That went into effect. So the next time we do a posting, we're going to have to put our rates on the posting, which I think will affect applicants. I think applicants, when they start first, are surprised that they're not going to make more when they go through the hiring process. We do have a little on the EMS side, or the EMT side, we do lose EMTs to better paying part-time jobs. So a lot of our per diem EMTs are full-time firefighters somewhere else, or they're trying to become a full-time firefighter somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually hang on to them. 90% of the time we hang on to them when they get hired somewhere, which is a really good thing. But a year into it, 2 years into it, they typically go, a lot of them, several of them have gone to a private ambulance company with the higher rate. You know, it's, and the other piece of that is it's hard for them to sometimes pick up a shift with us when they might get an offer for overtime at their regular job that day. You know, so that can be a challenge. You know, one thing that I really don't want to happen with our wages that we fall way too far behind. I think that's important. We're really lucky to have the staff that we have. We have a really high quality group. They do a really good job. I think that we're really well served with having part-time people on that ambulance. It's really hard to do. It's extremely hard to schedule. You know, but we haven't missed a medical call in the 6 years that I've been the chief, and that's really rare for fire departments that use part-time EMTs. It's extremely rare. I know of one in the region that uses a similar model. They miss at least one call per month.
So there's 13 people, 16 people?
There's more than that. That was just single role EMTs. And then there's also a number of firefighter EMTs. So we have 18 people that are per diem EMTs. They work for the SFRD just to work ambulance shifts. About 30 and 34 call members. A lot of the call members also work an ambulance shift. So we have 23 people that regularly work ambulance shifts, and then we have a number of people that fill in. And there's a total of about 40 people that work the ambulance for us.
Paramedics or?
So we're at basic life support service. We do have a number of paramedics that work for us. The number's gone down in recent years, but we still have, I think, 6 or 7 off the top of my head, paramedics that work for us. They have to work for us as basics because we have a BLS ambulance service. So,
But their qualifications, some
qualifications. The one piece with the pay that I missed is a little bit of an increase for a training component. So we had our biannual ambulance inspection this summer. Penn's has actually sat through it for the full day before, not this past one, but I think 3 years ago, or two and a half years ago, I should say. And the inspection went really well. They look at a couple hundred different items. We had 2 gigs. We had a dent on the rear bumper of the ambulance, which was already scheduled to be fixed. And we have an affiliation agreement with Metro West Medical Center in order to operate our ambulance. So we actually report to a medical control doctor at Framingham Union Hospital. And for that, we have an affiliation agreement. There was a sentence missing from that affiliation agreement. The state wanted us to have. Those were the 2 gigs that we got. Our inspector, however, strongly urged us to make some changes to our training program. So when we hire an EMT, they have a packet that they go through. They have to perform certain skills in training. They have to do certain things at calls before they get signed off to work with just one other EMT on the crew. So we call that third riding. They have to do third riding as the third EMT on the ambulance for a period of time. A lot of the training we were doing before they got signed off to work as a second EMT, but not all of it. So we would put them with the senior person and say, work on signing these people off on these things while you're working with them. We really have to transition to signing them off on everything before they go as the second EMT. So there's about a $4,000 increase to cover those additional third riding hours. And that's the gist of that increase.
We go back
Yeah,
several years.
under EMT compensation.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose the supplement has gone up pretty dramatically.
Yeah,
Is it all wage based?
it's there's two different reasons. So number one, there are some wage bases is because the ambulance was budgeted for a certain number of on-call shifts every week. Last year, we budgeted for the first time for 100% coverage in the building, which is really important for like a dozen different reasons, but we can get into that at a different time. But the other reason is, and this really got corrected with the help of Jeremy and Deb, but mainly Jeremy coming in. The ambulance was never budgeted for properly. And in some cases, we had pushback to budget for it properly because there would be a supplemental transfer at town meeting. Some people like that because it was free cash and it wasn't hitting the tax levy. But I'd go to town meeting every year embarrassed, people sitting there that don't know any different things that we would think that we overspent that money, but it wasn't truly the case in all those cases. So it's really that I think we're really accurately budgeting for it. And it's a combination of that and it's completely staffed in the building where there was a mixture of it before. We tried to budget based on the average of how many on-call shifts were being staffed that way. Problem is sometimes those changes would take place halfway through a fiscal year. It's like this person can't work an on-call shift anymore, and then you have to hire somebody to be in the building. But now it's completely covered. I think in the last 12 months, we've had one shift where 6 hours of it was one person there, one person on call. It was because of a complete extreme emergency. So it's completely staffed in the building, which is really good for response times and a number of other things.
The revenue side has been pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Who does the billing for you?
We have an outside billing company called Coastal Medical Billing. They're out of Sutton.
And how do you know billed versus collected?
So we collect approximately 86% of what we can collect. And I'll just kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So our average bill for a BLS transport to a hospital is about $1,800. So if you have private insurance, we'll collect a lot of that. Sometimes they'll send a copay bill to the patient. Or occasionally we run into a problem where some of the insurance companies have a contracted ambulance rate that's similar. They'll only pay that, and they try to balance bill the patient for, say, a few $100s. But a lot of our calls are Medicare or Medicaid. Medicare, we take in about $450 to $500 on a call like that. Medicare, it's even less. Medicare is like Mass Health. Medicaid is Mass Health. There's situations that happen like that. Sometimes people are unfortunately deceased. Sometimes get a bad address. So every dollar that we can't collect, they get 6 bills mailed to them.
At the wrong address.
What's that?
The wrong address.
In that instance, yes. Years ago, we had problems with our documentation, which led to some bills being out there. It's not a problem anymore. We had one case in all of last year where basically our crews were at the hospital getting signatures. We had another high priority call come in, and they left and they didn't get the signature and we couldn't bill for it. It's one one case that I can remember in the last couple of years, but occasionally, based on the insurance company, they'll send a check to the patient instead of to us. And our billing company works to recoup those funds the best they can. This came up at the select board the other night, and I just want to bring it up here. We talked about what can we do to increase the revenue. We're going to be going before the board for a rate increase in a couple of months. So we look at the rates every year compared to other towns, and for a while we were the highest, and we're kind of closer to the average now, depending on the group of towns that you look at. So we are going to be looking for some rate increases. The only other option we really have is to contract with the collections agency that would go after these people to pay their bills, but it's not something that we're in favor for. The estimated take on that would be between $5,000 and $10,000 a year. And I'm not really for doing that because it would mostly affect our residents who might be in dire straits because they call an ambulance in the first place. It's common with private ambulance companies in larger towns and cities, but it's not that common in smaller communities using a collections agency.
What's the trend in calls?
Say that again.
What's been the trend in calls?
Call volume.
Yeah.
So total calls for the department or just EMS?
Just EMS related to the ambulance.
So 2024 to 2025, we're actually down on the EMS side by about 35 calls.
How many total?
Total, I'm going to give you two categories, and I'll tell you why. We have three categories. We have fire, EMS, and then we have fire and EMS. So if we send a fire truck and an ambulance to a call, it comes under fire and EMS. Some towns count those as two calls. We count them as one. So 2024 EMS/fire and EMS combined was 452 calls, in addition to 289 fire calls for 2024. 2025, we are at, I didn't add up the individual categories like you want, so I'm just doing it in my head. We're at 415 combined EMS and fire and EMS, in addition to 493 fire calls. A lot of the fire calls, we had a pretty bad storm in December 19th, where we were really busy for a 24-hour period. So that's one of the driving factors in the fire calls for 2025.
You send the fire truck with every EMS call?
No, it's mostly car accidents, carbon monoxide calls, and then bad, more serious medical calls. For instance, cardiac arrests. We just had one involving somebody on a ladder a couple weeks ago. Incidents like that, somebody not breathing. Recent calls that the on-duty ambulance crew needs more hands for is one of them. The biggest driver of that is car accidents, but we don't send. We do send a duty officer. The red SUV goes to every medical, which is common for other towns. So.
And the questions?
So look at the deficit. It looks like it was $100,000 deficit in 26. The 3-year average is much higher than that. It's like 271K.
Say that again. Deficit.
Yeah, shortly. Revenues are not covering expenses.
No, the revenue covers generally about a third of the cost of the ambulance.
It's like in 26 deficit was $100,000. Then I looked at the 3-year average prior years, and it's like 271,000. It looks like
We're only 6 months into 27.
As far as raising rates on them, are you looking to raise rates to make it break even, or?
It will never break even. No, I don't know of any public town-run ambulance services that do break even. No, we're just looking to increase the revenues to the extent that we can.
That column there is year to date,
Exactly, yeah.
so it's that deficit will grow.
But
But those hence the need to have a supplement.
the supplemental budget, exactly.
So how does that deficit get funded then?
By, there's a town meeting, there's a budget. So, at the annual, so there's two funding mechanisms, there's the revenues and then there's general fund. Yeah.
So 26 is budgeted for 170,000 of revenue and 341,000 on the tax levy. There's one thing I'll mention about the revenue. So I would estimate based on my knowledge of the industry, half of all communities in the region have an ambulance revolving account. The other ones have a regular budget and then the revenue goes into the general fund, right? About, right?
Local receipts.
Local receipts. Thank you. We're the only one that has a revolving fund that budgets the revolving fund to cover the cost of the ambulance to 100% of the expected receipts. The average is about 50%. I'm just throwing that out. I'm not saying we change it, but that is a challenge with this budget.
Some of those revolving accounts for ambulances are actually, they build up so that they can buy new ambulances from the revolving account instead of borrowing.
Which was the original purpose of these funds. That was the original purpose for Sherborn and many other communities, was to purchase ambulances. It was basically a savings account for purchasing ambulance, and the industry trended towards covering operating expenses. But I just want to point that out. So like, if we have an unexpected and uncontrollable dip in the revenue for whatever reason, say we do more public insurance calls or the calls drop one year, you know what I mean? That just is a little bit of a risk. This account, it's something that we will look at, and then as what happened in the past every year, we could do a supplemental account meeting to cover that. It's just, I just wanted to, for the new members, I just wanted to provide that information. So,
That's something counted against the levy? What is that one?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty legit, just like another department expense.
Yeah.
So it's raised on the tax levy.
Well, I just want to clarify your question. Are you referring to the 370 budget request or a supplemental budget request to fund the shortage?
The ATM supplement on line 37 here. What I was thinking. Yeah, 341,000.
Yeah, that's subject to the levy.
Yep.
Right. But if the needed extra more money, it would either be a reserve fund transfer or
we do a town meeting, I think it's
town meeting, something
naturally.
naturally, yeah, and transfers.
Though until recently, that supplement that was approved ahead of the year budget was not enough. It was intentionally not enough. Right. And then at the spring of that current fiscal year, there'd be a town meeting article to use free cash to fund the difference.
Yeah.
It's really a structural budget deficit. That's not a sustainable way to fund an ongoing expense.
All right, so let's jump to capital.
Yeah.
Want to take it before?
I'll do engine 3 first. I sent a memo out. I was just going to do it in order what was on the memo. That's all right. I'm ready when you are, Stephen. All right. So we have on here a request for some money to repair engine 3. So engine 3 is something we should just talk about briefly in general. It's a 2004 Pierce Dash tanker. Carries 2,500 gallons of water. It's critical for any type of fire in the town virtually to supply water for it for obvious reasons. It's our oldest truck in the fleet as far as frontline vehicle by far. And we've run into some issues with it with corrosion. So on the frame and on the pump, you're actually going to have a reserve fund transfer coming your way shortly to repair corrosion on the pump because we just don't think it can wait till town meeting. That's going to be coming shortly, to the tune of $25,000 for that. So engine 3 has some extreme corrosion on its frame, to the point where we brought it to a couple of different repair shops for them to look at it, fire truck repair shops, and they advised us to replace the truck. And that kind of kicked off a process in which, we did a lot of research. I can personally say I spoke to no less than 20 different people about it: fire chiefs, mechanics, other shops. A lot of chiefs said to replace it. Some other chiefs had some other, input as to what to do based on experiences they've had. And we think we should repair it, because if we were to replace engine 3, it'd be a cost of about 1.3 million, 1.1 to 1.3 million, depending on the manufacturer. So, engine 3, other than some of the issues it's having now, is a pretty solid truck. And we prefer to keep that truck in the fleet for as long as we can. We think if we do these repairs, we can get 30 years out of it. We'll still be coming to you in about 3 or 4 years to replace engine 3, because once we order it, similar to the ambulance, it takes 3 or 4 years to arrive. So we found a shop on the North Shore that'll do this. They've given us a quote. We've worked in a little bit of contingency funds into this request, just in case there are some unexpected, which I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't. That's basically the request.
Probably a big saving, like 4K or something.
Yeah, I would say, and again, we're gonna,
Debt service.
again, we're gonna fix this truck. The select board asked, what do you think you'll have other, I forget how he phrased it, but do you think you'll have other issues with it? The other components of the truck are pretty solid. Obviously, can't completely predict that. Anything could happen to any of the trucks. But we think that this will certainly extend the life of this vehicle. The other thing that came up at that meeting is, even if we were to request an engine and a replacement for engine 3 this year, we still have to fix it because of the trucks are 3 or 4 years out.
What did the chiefs that you spoke to who suggested replacing it now, what was their reasoning?
Because they thought we based on the corrosion that's on that truck and the pump and everything. I mean, that if you look at how departments replace vehicles, I mean, they could have used it as justification to replace it. If we wanted to go that way, which we don't, we're not. We're trying to, be fiscally prudent, keep the thing going. So
There's some nearby communities that have a more accelerated replacement schedule. Not necessarily based on the actual condition of the vehicle, but just the age.
Yeah. There are a lot of towns that replace just on age without any condition factors. We look at both. Anything else on that? No? The next request is for some hose and nozzles. Basically, for a number of reasons, we have to add to our inventory of hose. The larger portion of that is for 1.75-inch hose. That's our main fire attack hose that we use for building fires, vehicle fires, machinery fires, basically anything other than brush. And then we need to purchase some brush hose also. And both of these requests are due to just our needs and losses of hose that we've had over the last few years. Some of it due to testing. All of our hose, every foot of it gets tested every year by an outside vendor. Flow and pressure tested. And we've lost a lot of our 1.75-inch over the last couple of years. We also factored into this number what we expect to lose over the next year or two going forward. That's then we have some nozzles in that. Basically, we don't have enough nozzles. We have to, per a number of guidelines and just best practices in general, the truck should have spare nozzles on them for issues that come up at an incident. Very important this time of year when they freeze. the nozzles and the hose lines can freeze at this time of year. And we're looking to request funds to add to the inventory to replace some stuff. Keep our inventory where it should be.
When would you place this order?
If it's free cash, the
The night of town meeting.
the day after town meeting.
For July 1.
If it's free cash, no, we can
Do it the day after. Yeah,
after town meeting closes.
yeah. We'd place the order that it's ready to go.
Borrowing though, it needs to wait. Positive,
Yes.
affirmative vote at the ballot, and
Will they hold this quote for that?
Yeah, there's a little. Was it this one?
One of the,
We added $1,000 for that. There will be a small percentage increase that they told me about, which I believe is happening March 1st, but this will cover that. Sorry about
that was
that.
my question, was the quote was 2360.
Yes. Yes. Sir. Yeah.
How many, you mentioned the nozzles freezing, are there heated equipment storage on the trucks?
So the compartments aren't heated. The nozzles freeze when you use them at a fire.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah. Yep. The cabs are heated. That's it. The outside compartments are not heated.
If the nozzle freezes, you swap it for an unfrozen one and then you wait till they get back to the station and it thaws out.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's a number of different scenarios where you need additional nozzles. We were at a fire yesterday in Medfield, and we have long driveways, so this happens with us. The trucks in the driveway, it's got two pre-connects that we call them. So nozzles and hose attached, ready to go, and they pull them off. Then they need a third line, and you have to take hose from another part of the truck and find a nozzle. It's based on how the trucks are configured too. And we had to get a third nozzle in operation. There's a number of scenarios where you need that. Sometimes with some of the nozzles, debris from the tank of the truck, like rust chunks, will go through the pump, go into the hose line, and clog the nozzle, which I've seen happen. And this is having them is, again, just generally based on the conversation we've been having, best practice, but it is also in accordance with National Fire Protection Association standards. Anything else on this? Oh, no, thank you. We have a request for some self-contained breathing apparatus items. So we have 29 air packs in service, or SCBA units in service, I should say. We have one for every, what we call riding position on the trucks. So all of our fire trucks, the structural trucks, not the brush trucks, the structural trucks, each have an air pack for every seat, which is again in accordance with NFPA or National Fire Protection Association standards. Also best practice for a whole host of reasons that I could get into. And what we found is based on the amount of air packs that we have out for repair at any given time, in addition to the ones that we have in training when we have people in the academy, we're dipping below those numbers. So a lot of times we'll have one truck out of service on each apparatus, and we've actually dipped below that, and we don't want to dip below one being out of service on every truck. And if we add an air pack to the inventory, that'll solve that problem. We also have some bottles that we're requesting, some SCBA bottles. Some of them are, I think 6 of them are expiring. 5 of them are expiring, and then we're looking to add an additional 6 based on the people going to the academy and the bottles being out of service. We use 45-minute bottles. The industry typically uses 30-minute bottles or 45-minute bottles or 45-minute bottles. I have an air pack in my car with some spare bottles. We actually don't have enough 45 bottles to go around, so my air pack, has 30-minute bottles. Some of our older 30-minute bottles that are sort of on the way out. So we do plan to apply for a grant for this request. The problem with planning to apply for a grant with this request is going to depend on the timing of when the grant comes out and when the awards are made. You know, it would be a federal grant, and we're still waiting on FEMA to announce that grant. So, if we do get the grant, you know, we turn the funds back over to the town. But if not, we would use this request. So, now I will add, I think 80%, 75 to 80% of our current SCBA units have been grant funded, and they're quite expensive.
Questions?
Last request is for thermal imaging cameras. So we're looking to replace one camera that's currently on one of our apparatus, engine 4, which is our primary engine in the town. That unit's 12 years old, and it's needed some significant repairs in the past. It's actually out of service right now due to some ongoing issues. So looking to replace that imager, and then we're looking to add 12 smaller imagers to the fleet. So the industry's sort of gone to not just one thermal imaging camera per truck, but most firefighters now going into a burning building have their own personal thermal imaging camera. So we, based on events in the industry and some of our experiences, we determined that we decided to take this request forward. We had 2 avenues to go. We could have gone for every firefighter that works for us gets their own thermal imaging camera attached to their SCBA mask. That request would have been 40 to 50,000. Or this request, which was, we'll buy 12 of these cameras, we'll put them in the seats of the trucks that get used for interior firefighting the most. And the firefighters, when they put their air pack on, they'll just be attached to the air pack for those running positions. Certainly better for maintenance and the overall request for this. It was a lot cheaper to go this route. That's the basis for that request.
One of the cameras on the quote was much more expensive than the 12. Just curious.
Yeah, so that's the camera on engine 4. So basically, there's 2 types of imagers now in our job. There's the beefier imagers, which is like the one on engine 4 that like the company officer holds. It's got a bigger screen. There's temperature fluctuations. You could take photos with them. It's crazy. Not that we really need that. And then there's the individual situational awareness cameras, which is what the 12 are. So if one of our members is in a situation in the building where they need to find a door or window, they're looking for a victim, they're looking for their partner, they can pick that camera up and become oriented in a no visibility environment. That's the goal with these cameras.
So you get what you need from the market.
Exactly. Yeah. Questions on that?
Does the NFPA set just kind of best practices, or are there like levels below which you cannot go or you're in violation of?
So they set, the NFPA is a funny thing. So it's an industry consensus standard best practice. However, we are an OSHA state. OSHA has what's called a general duty clause, which states that employers, i.e. the fire department, should plan for known hazards. And what are known hazards? They're NFPA standards. You know, so it's their consensus standards. They're not leveled out for the type of town completely. They are with our response times and standards and personnel being on scene in certain times can be, so we have a different standard than Framingham, but for some of the equipment standards, they're not different. So for instance, NFPA would tell us that we should have replaced engine 3 a couple of years ago, but most towns do stretch that one out. I shouldn't say most towns, depending, this community dependent, you know. NFPA says we have to replace the tires on every fire truck every 7 years. You know, based on it depends on the vehicle, but based on we look at the usage, you know, and some of them go 9 to 10 years, depending on the usage, you know. So there's things like that where, you know, there's some standards that we've actually adopted by policy, but we put in the policy statement that we adopt this standard for these reasons, but for this section of the standard, we haven't for whatever reason.
Do you, does your budget also include the water storage that's used for firefighting throughout the town?
Can you say that again?
Does your budget also include, does your department oversee the water storage used for firefighting throughout the town?
So we oversee it, but the funding is managed under the DPW.
Are you aware of any issues with any of the below ground tanks that you addressed?
There's no issues that I'm aware of right now. They do, however, come up time to time. Something that you'll see in the future is we're likely requesting funding to add more for a number of reasons. So, like for instance, we have 4 of our fire ponds, if you will, that are dry throughout much of the year right now, over the last couple of years. And I think that our direction is going to have to be to put more cisterns in. They're called cisterns. Whether we get the funding through the town or other means, we're going to try other means, obviously. We do have a couple options out there.
So is that a project that's on the way to begin to do siting and?
We're looking at it right now. Yeah. We're doing so. We've been for the last year working on a water supply plan for the whole town that's based on each individual address. We started it a year ago. We had an intern, and 3 weeks into it, we lost the intern. So it's because of the detail that's going into it. It's taking a lot longer. At most, the very vast majority of it's fallen on me. So, but we're looking at that. We're looking at how the hydrants are spaced out. You know what I mean? We have about 21 water sources that we use in the town. I think 4 of them are tanks, which are cisterns. The rest are ponds. So we're looking at that and how we can better space some of these things out, because there are certain areas of the town that don't have the access like the other areas do. So, and then we have some hydrant sites, like I just mentioned, that are dry for half the year. So
you're driving that water supply plan?
yes.
Yep. Other questions? Chief Wood?
I have a question, actually, going back to Emily's compensation. Have you, for example, looked at, say, the contiguous towns and gotten what their compensation, the range is and the average for light communities or uphold communities, or have you just looking at, I know you mentioned one town where it's 20, but have you how broadly have you looked to see where we are in that?
Pretty broadly. So, there's one that's $20 an hour to be on call. There's another one that we compete with a lot. That's nearby that also has part-time EMTs, because a lot of most fire departments have full-time firefighter EMTs or firefighter paramedics. So we didn't look at those, but we did go out. We looked at our competitors with that town, and then the other local competitors of the private ambulance services. We didn't go very far as distance, just because the ranges there in the region could be different. Of course, but we've looked at who we know we compete with. Some local competitors. So
They're new to the math, or can you share the math? Have you found an average or consensus, or?
Yeah, the average for our staff would be approximately $28 an hour.
Oh, I thought that was the high end.
I think it might have been $27.50. I don't have it in front of me. I should have brought it in front of me, but if I remember correctly, the town that we compete with the most was a little higher than the privates, and that might have been the $28 number, but the privates were still right up there.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah, but
It's just a quick question, just really quickly. Do you ever do kind of any, with the high school, any interactions with the high school or
Not a lot. 'Cause
Demos, for example, or?
I wish we did more. I'll tell you, we have a really good relationship with the Dover Fire Department now. They have a new chief who's
Mhm.
it's been very good to work with. He started in September. I could see us doing more. Are you talking about for recruitment?
Combination, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we do really well with recruitment. In general, our fire department does. You know, but we should do more at the high school because half the kids over there are Sherborn residents just for demonstration purposes and everything. But I do see the partnership with them in terms of the regional school getting better. You know, in the future, but it's been a challenge in the past.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot of collaboration in the past.
Yes.
Maybe you should get a Dalmatian.
What's that?
Maybe you should get a Dalmatian.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but
Well, getting time in the school is probably hard to do because
Yeah.
everything's pretty well scheduled.
yeah, we do spend a lot of time at the elementary school. So we have an annual grant for public education, and it requires us to go to the elementary school. We quiz them, we do presentations for them, and
Tough to rely on a fifth grader for committing to the career in fire.
no, it's more for fire safety education, you know. But yeah, no, you're right. So I think every kid wants to be a firefighter at some point, you know.
You two grab the axe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Probably more, Daddy, you shouldn't be on the ladder.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Anything else for the chief? Thank you.
Thank you.
And we move on to any advisory committee member reports. Have anything they'd like to bring up?
Capital budget was supposed to meet yesterday, but unfortunately the agenda didn't post it, so it's now next Tuesday. So nothing to report for that.
Have you already heard these capital presentations and that?
Yes. And so has Laura, by the way.
Subcommittee met for mostly an organizational meeting and sort of laying out what we're proposing to think about. So, first meeting.
Good.
Yesterday.
Excellent. Anybody have anything else? Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Well, we have to take a roll call vote because Laura's on the phone.
Oh, thanks for nothing.
Laura?
Yeah, yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Wait, are we voting?
Oh, voting to adjourn, yes.
Okay, yes, okay. Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Paul? Aye. George?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
And I am I as well. We adjourned at 8:49.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.